A friend was asking me yesterday about how is self-worth created? How do you and I know we have value, that our needs, desires, goals, dreams, fears are important, have the right to take up space? And then what do we do after we've been abused? How do we heal when there's been profound damage to our self-esteem? And how did that actually happen? How did the damage to our self-esteem happen? Aren't we fully formed adults? Don't we come into relationships knowing who we are? Then why did this affect us? Is it because we're weak? Or maybe we have poor boundaries? We don't protect ourselves good enough? So I thought what I would talk about today for the first 20 minutes or so, and then I'll take questions for the last half an hour, 40 minutes with you, is I thought I would talk about the development of self-esteem and how to begin to repair it after abuse, after it's been damaged. So let's go back to how self-esteem is even created. And by the way, I'm Dr. Carrie McAvoy. I'm a psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. And these days, I primarily talk about relationship issues, narcissism, and everything related to mental health. So let's talk about healthy self-esteem and how it gets formed. So imagine a baby is born and it really doesn't have its sense of itself as separate from mom. It sees himself as just sort of part of the mother unit. They call it the baby mother dyad. And as it's being fed and nurtured and loved and kept warm and dry, it has a sense of itself as being worthy of that it's lovable, and that it has value and it's important. It senses that. And if there's moments where there's disconnect, it tries to make sense of that. It tries to process that. And then as it begins to grow, it starts to have a sense, the baby, she or he, has a sense of themselves as separate from the parent, as from the primary caregivers. And they realize caregivers can leave, and then the abandonment fears start to show up, but also caregivers can kind of take over and be too intense and be too close and don't let them be themselves. And so they get afraid of what's called engulfment or enmeshment. That twin fear is a fear that is very primitive and very basic, but a part of all of our makeup. We all still have those fears of abandonment and of being engulfed. As this happens, we start to then have a sense that we are imperfect. For one, we poop our pants and we have accidents and we're clumsy. We don't do things well. And there's a sense of shame about that. We wonder what will happen. Will we lose the relationship when the person sees that we've messed things up? We hope there's a resiliency to the connection with our primary caregivers, that they love us despite that. And it's when we experience our shame and then have them love us despite what's happened, we become to be aware of our unconditional nature of our acceptance, and our self-worth grows. We know that we're bigger than our mistakes. We know we don't have to show up so perfectly. All these experiences kind of inform and shape us, and we continue to go through our childhood and in young adolescence experimenting and practicing new things, and we see how it hits, how it lands in our social world, and how our parents interact with us, and our siblings interact with us, how our friends interact with us. And all of this continues to inform how we see ourselves. Yes, we also inform ourselves. We take chances and find out that it succeeds, and that we get confident in our ability to do new things and realize that it goes well. So it's also happening at the same time with ourselves, but it's also happening in the context of relationships. Our sense of self is never derived in the absence of relationship. We're relational creatures from the moment we're conceived, and will be relational all the way until we pass away. We always see ourselves in the context of a greater community. And that impacts and influences our sense of self. So we get into a relationship, we get into a narcissistically abusive or an abusive relationship. And the dynamics, of course, for the person who's abusive, the dynamic is all about power and control, domination. They do that, though, by making you a subject or submissive to their needs, to their agenda. And there's at the root of narcissism, and I don't know if it's necessarily the root of psychopathy, but it certainly is the root of narcissism, is this envy, this fear of not life being fair and not having things equal and reciprocal. So they then don't like your success. They resent your confidence and your achievement. It's interesting because they choose you because you're a confident person, and they like that. That makes them look good. You reflect well to them. But when they're in a relationship with you and up close, your success, your confidence is a reminder of their insecurity, although they're not aware of it consciously, but it is painful to be around it. So one way that they solve that is they diminish, degrade, devalue, and minimize you. That's a way to, in other words, and almost kind of pervert or degrade, contaminate your goodness, contaminate your value. So they begin to do this eroding of your self-esteem. They do that through criticism. Often it's painted as they are doing a favor for you so that you're better for their criticism. I always found it really ironic, how they would even criticize in areas that you're supposedly an expert, but they're more of an expert. They have to kind of show you up in your good spots, your best points. But they also do it around deprivation. They will begin to control your world, your environment, who you see, who your friends are, how you spend your time, when you get to eat, how much sleep you get. They begin to sort of subjugate you to them as a way to elevate, puff up, and make themselves feel more secure and better because of their shakiness, their insecurity. And they will also then begin to gaslight, which is to substitute your reality or what you're experiencing as true and real for you for theirs. And often that's partly to deceive and to minimize you. But it's also a way to create insecurity in you, to erode, again, your sense of what you think is true and real. They are replacing that so that you're on shaky foundation and you're no longer sure. It's this constant chipping away. So the question is, if we come into these relationships fully adult, then why is it so impactful? Well, that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about us from the moment we're born. We are relational creatures. Part of what happens is that our sense of self is shaped by how others experience you. So let me give you an example. So say that actually, this is a research project that happened. I thought this is fascinating. So they actually did this study. They had a subject that they identified, or several subjects, and they told the people in the environment of that subject to tell that person they looked ill. Are they okay? Are they feeling okay? So that person, the subject, heard repeatedly throughout the day, "You look a little off. Are you doing okay? Because I'm a little worried about you," or something like that. Would you know, the person went home sick. They began to feel ill and then actually left work because they began to wonder if they're well. So that's the power of suggestion. I know that's just suggestion, but imagine that you were in an environment that constantly questioned the validity of what you did, criticized you, wondered if you're that big of an expert, minimized you, made you feel degraded, made you feel like not even second class, but third or fourth or fifth class. They constantly make sure they kept you under their thumb. Your needs didn't regulate. You're invisible. In a narcissistic world, you don't even exist. You're invisible. They don't see people as people. They just see people as tools. Well, what happens to us is that it ends up eroding our sense of self, and we begin to doubt ourselves, and it creates confusion. And we, as a way to keep peace and hoping that we'll have the relationship return to its good stage, the love bombing, which we think is real, even though it's not real, we keep hoping that by us being smaller, being less, asking for less, doing things more their way, we keep hoping as we submit to greater and greater degrees, we can repair the relationship. But what happens is we're damaging our sense of self. I remember that Kristen Milstead said that she found that her sense of self got so small, so tiny, she could hardly hear who she was and how she felt about things. It's interesting, we just did a poll here on TikTok and we asked, do you have low self-esteem after abuse? 50% of you said, I have no self-esteem. Another 41% said, I have some, but not enough. And then it's only 8%, 8.33% said it didn't affect me. So yeah, that gives you a sense of how powerful this whole process is and its ability to shape, color, give definition to ourselves because we are reciprocal creatures. We're reciprocal creatures. We're constantly taking input. So just like that person who went to work and heard repeatedly, "You look ill today," it made that person ill. They felt ill and they went home. We have the power to impact each other, which is really powerful when you think about that. That to me is quite serious responsibility in what we say to people and how we say it to people. I know we talk a lot about our own self-talk, the power in self-talk, but we often don't pause long enough and talk about the power of what we hear from those around us. And I'm not saying that I want us to just be overly positive. I actually don't like highly positivity. I think that can be toxic too, because it's denial of our whole self and we have hard moments. But are we around people who build us up? Are we around people who are non-judgmental and really give us permission to be fully ourselves? Are we around people that allow us to do things that maybe they don't agree with, that they're uncomfortable for them, but they don't need to weigh in because it's our life? They allow it to be our life. When we're in these abusive relationships, we're in a relationship with somebody who pretty much gives us a script and expects you to follow it. And the extra hard part, not only is it a script that so you don't get to be yourself, but it's a script you don't even get to see what the script is. So you're trying to live up to some expectation that you don't even know what the expectation is. And of course you're doomed to fail that, which then see again, the power of that, to know that you are supposed to be living up to something. You don't even know what it is, but you know you're failing it all the time. It's very damaging to our sense of self. They're thinking, and I think this is fascinating, that narcissistic abuse is one of the worst forms of abuse because of the degree that erodes our sense of self, because it causes this lack of confidence. And I think it's really, really powerful. We pause on this and think about that. So evaluate your social environment. So I have some comments about, I'm going to talk about for a few minutes how to begin to heal, and then I'll turn it over to you to talk about whatever you want to talk about today so that we can take your questions. And right now, by the way, I can't see your comments. When I take my glasses off, it keeps me blind because I'm trying to have a line of thought here, and it's very hard when I'm watching all the comments. But I will soon put my glasses on so I can see that. How to heal. So let's imagine for a moment that most of you are out of a relationship and you're now just trying to get your feet back underneath of you and recover. And we're going to ignore the fact whether or not your abusive ex is still a part of your life, whether or not they're creating drama through the legal system or whatever. I'm going to ignore that because I know that's impactful. But I want to just focus on you. I want to focus on how to help you heal after abuse. Your self is not lost. It's still there. It's just gotten really quiet. You have learned because of again, think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know how familiar you are with Maslow's work. He said, and it's a theory, but I think it's very valid. He said that our basic need is when we're out in survival, you know how they dump people out naked and alone in the survival things? Their basic need is shelter and food. We're going to be concerned with that first. So if you're in a situation where you're completely exposed, your first thing that you're going to attend to is not how happy you are, or it's not even whether or not you're fed. You're going to simply find shelter and protection from the elements because you need to survive the night. That's your primary resource or goal. And Maslow, interestingly, I think maybe I'm mixing him up with somebody else, but one of these people who was a writer, and I may be mixing him up, actually survived the Holocaust. I think I am. I'll think of the other person. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it was Maslow. But anyway, you can look him up. He's a very interesting guy with interesting history. The second basic nature is we want to make sure that we have a sense of food and we can know we're going to be fed and all that kind of stuff. The next level of, and maybe I'm mixing this up. I'm going to pull this up so I don't say this wrong, because I know that the first two levels are very basic levels, and then we climb on top of that. Then it becomes a sense of belonging is the next. So I want to make sure I don't misspeak it. Here we go. Okay, I'm almost there. So the very bottom is physiological needs. You need to know that you have food, water, shelter, and clothing. Your next basic need is safety. You need to know that you are not going to be eaten by the lion. You need to know that right now I'm signing up for healthcare, that I have insurance so I don't get bankrupt should I have a health crisis or something. You need to know that you're secure. Now, when we're in an abusive situation, that's all we can attend to. We need to know that our basic needs are being attended to, and we need to feel safe. And we exclusively focus on that. And when you leave an abusive relationship, you continue for a long time just to focus on safety. The next need after that is love and belonging. And then after that is self-esteem, or good esteem. And then finally, self-actualization. I'm going to be honest with you guys, we never get to the top rung. I wish we did, but we don't. Most of us top out at love and belonging, and we struggle sometimes even to deal with much of esteem. These are like in a perfect world situation, and most of us don't live in a perfect world. So most of us are concerned with some mid-level tier. But when you're in an abusive relationship, you're primarily focused on physiological needs and safety needs. And when you leave one, you continue because of the ramped up physiological neurology you got from being in this fight or flight stage. You continue to focus on safety and physiological needs, which means you don't get to focus on feeling like you're loved and belong and that you have a self-esteem and focusing on yourself. So the first thing I want you to do is assess how safe is your environment, excluding the ex who's creating drama. And hopefully you can get that person out of your life once the legal piece settles down. How then safe is your environment? Are you picking people who allow you to be yourself? Are you learning, again, relearning what you like to do? Are you taking back your leisure time and doing things that are important to you, that make you feel cared for and seen? One of the things I lost, and it's really important to me, is I like to unwind while watching TV at night. It's been a long time ritual of mine for most of my life. When I was living with my ex, he controlled the TV and watched stuff that I really hated. So I wasn't able to focus on things that would help me to relax. So I lost something that was really critical to me. So one of the things that I had to do when I got back out was to take that back and take ownership of it. It's sometimes one of the things that we do is we end up not knowing how to take these things back. We struggle with it. We almost like become an abuser to ourselves and neglectful of ourselves. But watch for that. Part of that is because you just don't want to get in trouble. That's where you need to remind yourself you're in a safe environment, that you're not being abused anymore because you're controlling who's in your world and who's not in your world. So become kind of comfortable with reclaiming these things that are important to you. Like, what foods do you enjoy eating? What friendships have you lost track of that maybe you need to reacquaint yourself with? Kind of like check out these things that you may have lost sight of. I think another thing that's super, super important in reclaiming our sense of self is really reevaluating our social system. For me, I found out that I had accidentally surrounded myself with a lot of toxic people. I'd gotten used to be so accommodating, so easygoing, that I didn't realize that I accidentally had made myself appealing to predatory people. So I had to clean house. For a while, I had nearly no relationships as I needed to rebuild. I had to become okay with losing all the relationships in order for me to have room to invite new relationships back in. So slow down and assess yourself. Assess your relationships with other people. Are they people who really value you and see you as important? So those are the first two things: is reclaim yourself, your activities, your hobbies, your interests, your things that you enjoy. The second is really make sure that you're careful about who you let in your life, because again, as I said, how we shape ourselves is the feedback we get. If you get people who are running you down or critical of you or make you feel edgy or unsafe, then you're keeping your fight or flight system highly activated and very, very anxious and concerned. And then I think the last thing is begin to cautiously, carefully, but deliberately set goals. Begin to think about what is it you want to do to make your life your own. I know that for me, this is where I'm at right now. I would say that's my new challenge. If I end up being single for the rest of my life, and I'm 60 now, so we're talking, for the next however long I'm healthy to be able to do the things that I want to do, what do I need to do in order for me to have a good life? And for me to break the frame and thinking that only people who are retired together and doing things as a couple has a good life. No, that's not true. That's what culture says. That's what society feeds us. That's not necessarily true. You can have a good life being, your age and doing the things that you want. You can do that. It doesn't need to have a partner. This fear of being alone, and it was huge for me. Being alone was one that really controlled me, partly because I'd come out of teenage years feeling very, very lonely and cut off and an outsider. But for me to realize that was, I can become my own friend. I've talked about that in one of my recent videos. I can become my own friend and make my life feel rich. I can like enjoy this moment and do things with other people that are really, really fun. So here's some things I'm doing as the year end, because, everyone knows how we go all out to New Year's Eve as a couple and all that stuff. A friend of mine got a hold of me and said, let's go to a Great Gatsby New Year's party in Dallas. We're buying outfits, going to dress up and putting stuff in my hair, and got the long beads coming in the mail. And I'm going to dress up like a flapper and go to the Great Gatsby party. Yes, her and I are going. We may be the only two women there without partners, but hell, I'm having a good time. That's one of the things I'm going to do. We're also heading over to New Orleans here in a few weeks. I'm super excited about seeing New Orleans at Christmas time. I know most people see it at Mardi Gras, but hey, it's, I've never been. I'm excited about that. I've really loved traveling all over this year with Narc Avengers. It's been a lot of fun too, getting to meet new people, getting to meet you. So those are the ways in which we recapture our life, is not waiting for it to be whatever we perceive to be perfect, but set the goals now. Ask yourself, what is it you really like to do? And how can you make this happen in the way that works for you? And that's part of finding yourself and reclaiming and healing yourself. And all of these experiences rebuilds your sense of self, gives you more confidence, helps you take more risks, lets you know that you're able to succeed and you're not failing. All of these things kind of like build on themselves. So really watch for that. Reclaim your activities. Be careful of your social support system. Make sure it's supportive. And then begin to set longer term goals that don't conform to necessarily cultural definitions, because they're cultural. It doesn't mean they're real or good. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to put my glasses on today so we can now talk to you, so I can see what you're saying. I've seen that Bree is here, and I love my mod, Sarah and Brittany. Thank you so much, you guys, on TikTok. You guys rock so much. I appreciate that. And so today, put your thumbs up in front of your comments or questions for me, and let's talk about where you guys are, how you're doing, what you want to talk about for the next 40 minutes. Bree, thank you so much for pushing my book, Love You More. Yeah, if you want to know exactly what happened, the story of my abuse, it's called Love You More, The Harrowing Tale of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross. And I give you a very frank, raw look in at what abuse looks like and how it can happen to a psychologist. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine who right now is taking mediation training. She's a social worker. She's living in Florida. And she's been showing me slides of their teaching on abuse. They're out of date. I was saying to her, honey, that's not the latest research. I was telling her, you need to read this book and you need to check out this research. And it was really interesting hearing the kind of information she's getting. Oh, I know these glasses are very, very, let me flip over to the other ones are blue filters. So you're going to have more of a kind of a funny filter on it. So Winjoy wants to know, how do you handle family members who harass you during holidays and use, what's FOG? What's FOG stand for? Yeah, there you go. Not quite as reflective. How do you handle them? I would suggest is that you go in with whoever you're going with, you and your family or whoever you're going with, create a plan. You talk about it ahead of time, what's going to happen. Because you know these people. It's not the first time you've gotten together. Oh, hi from Scotland. Scotland's on one of my bucket lists. I really want to go to Scotland. I'm Scottish, by the way. Scotch-Irish. Anyway, so you go in with a plan. You know that this is going to be difficult, that there's going to be drama, because that's typically what happens in these relationships. And you've been there enough to know what will happen, how it will go. So you can predict what will there be issues around food or issues around gift wrapping or issues around the kids or issues around whatever. You'll know what the issues are, but go in with a plan of how you plan to deal with it. And also go in with a plan of know when you're going to leave, or if there's going to be an incident that will cause you to leave. So go in prepared, and then don't be surprised. Be ready to walk away from a conversation that makes you uncomfortable. And don't be engageable. I know it's really hard, but you can prepare for this. Our biggest problem is we go in, this is back to that reciprocal nature of us wanting relationships to affirm us. Our biggest vulnerability is we go into these relationships hoping the person or the family member will create space for us and make us feel safe and affirm us, and that we'll somehow figure out how to make that happen. And you're not gonna make that happen. So if you can go in with a plan how to protect yourself more cautiously, more intentionally, I think you'll have a much better time. Or at least you'll know when you're supposed to leave. Yeah, Whitney, over on Instagram, I have a question on a narc question when you can. Absolutely. If you put a thumbs up and put it in here, I will pick it up and talk about it. So let me know what you're thinking of. Oh, it's so interesting. TikTok has just added this, like how much people are like contributing or gifting. It's a new little sign for me. It's kind of weird. I'm trying to get used to that. And I don't ask people to join unless we talk about it and plan it ahead. I'm sorry about that. I know you guys asked to join, but I never accept those unless I know we're going to do it and what we're going to do it about. I just want that kind of information. Yeah, divinity, toxic members do trigger angry emotions. That's because you're hoping for affirmation. You're going in vulnerable with your heart open. You need to go in with your heart not open. You need to know that this person's not going to give you that and be prepared so that you're not vulnerable. So imagine yourself like, okay, so think of if you put milk in eggs, the milk will absorb the eggs, right? But if you put a rock in eggs, the rock does not absorb the eggs. One is a permeable substance, the other is not. The other one's more of a durable substance. Go in prepared to be more of a rock in that situation than bread. If you're less open, less vulnerable, then you can't absorb the toxicity of that environment. Unfortunately, that's not great for a long-term relationship. I'm just saying to cope with holidays, cope with brief periods of time. Kale asks, I have court next month with my narcissist about his visits, and he's not been consistent 64% of the time. Are you documenting that? That's really, really important. For any of you guys in a legal battle, there is an acronym that Dr. Romney recommends called CRAVED, C-R-A-V-I, or C-R-A-V-E-D, craved, like crave, but with a D. I can't tell you off the top of my head what it stands for, but those are the qualities she says to identify and then list the frequency of these. This is a really great way to talk about problematic behaviors, narcissistic behaviors, without upsetting the court by using terminologies they don't like, because they are biased against you coming in and sounding like a psychologist. They want you to strictly speak of the behaviors. So look up Dr. Romney and CRAVED. It's an acronym, and that's a good way for you to like document this behavior. When, what was said, what was the reaction, what time did it happen, who was present. You want to document that and then bring in a consistent sense of history of that. That is really a great way for you to bolster your court case, bolster your claim, such as that they're 64% of the time that they're not, Yes, my friend is in Florida, and she's in the Sarasota area, and she probably, I don't know if she's taking clients or not, but Linda, if you get a hold of me, DM me, I'll see if I can put you two together. She is trauma informed. I forget about that. She's trauma informed. She's a very good therapist, a good friend of mine, actually. So, yeah. I'm reading through the appointment. Yeah, Whitney, they are damn good at all of that. They are very good. Yeah, Kaz Smith, telling lies. I've had 30 years of complex, serious lies. Now I find it hard to believe anyone. Exactly. That's the way to degree that people can mess with our sense of reality, is that we then become cautious and careful, and we find ourselves guarded because we've been so wounded. Part of that is because of the abuse. You're still trying to heal after the abuse, but part of it is it needing to reclaim your sense of safety. So I want to challenge you, Kaz, to think of it this way. Think of it that you want to find a way to protect yourself better. Can you understand maybe the vulnerabilities that you might have had that led you to be a little bit more open? Like, for example, for me, I can tell you what mine was. I was just widowed. I didn't want to be single when I met my ex. I was really in a rush to reclaim the couple life that I'd had before. It's so much so that some of the things that he said and did that I knew was a little odd or not quite right, I'm like, well, they're fixable. That's what I said to myself. And no, they weren't fixable. They were problematic. And I also had a kind of some gut reaction that something wasn't adding up, and I didn't trust myself enough. Now I know that if my gut's saying, then I like, nope. So start to rebuild confidence in yourself. That's really what I'm heading at, is really work at that. That's very, very important. Okay, back here over to TikTok. And I know, guys, if I Yes, thank you so much for repeating that, Bree. It's craved. Yes, CRAVED. Look for craved. That's what you want to document for the court for the way in which they're abusive. Whitney wants to know, is there, for a narcissist who wants to change, what some books could they read that are written by PhDs? Man, I don't know off the top of my head, Whitney. I'm gonna have to think on that one, okay? I'll have to get back to you. DM me so that I know to continue to think about that, so I don't lose that thought. But that's a great question. Somebody else asked me for another book recommendation. If I know I didn't say it, so would you please ask the question again? It was over on TikTok. Somebody asked on TikTok. They wanted that. I have a book, by the way. And then I see Brittany pushing it. But if you're in a relationship right now and you're not for sure why you can't leave and you feel really, really confused, then this is the book for you. It's a workbook and a course. It helps you process systematically what's causing the confusion and the mind fog, and it helps you to break it apart so that you understand what actually is true. It's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. Now, when I wrote the title, I knew it was a catchy title, but I didn't realize how provocative it would be. I mean, it would be hard to if you have that sit in your house and you have a narcissist around, so I want to let you know that you can download a copy as a digital copy on my website, on the link in the bio, there's a digital copy that you can put on your phone that's fillable on your phone. You don't need to have a written copy. You can actually write out your answers on your phone and keep it safe so it's hidden so nobody sees it. And the courses you can do on your phone. You don't need to do it on a computer where you maybe share a computer with your partner. So please check that out. It's written specifically. It's what I needed in the middle of all that for me to help understand why I wasn't able to leave. So we asked the question, do you have toxic or narcissistic parents? And today in TikTok, the audience that's here, 85% of the audience did. That's fascinating. It's very fascinating. Wow. Yeah, I did too. I had a problem with that as well. Carmen asked over on Instagram, and I don't really understand the question, is can we talk about salary? Salary about what? Salary, how's that related to narcissistic abuse? That's why I'm kind of interested by that. And I know I jumped over 50 comments on TikTok, so if I didn't see something and you really want me to answer it, please come back and bring it back up. I'd be happy to talk about it today. We have lots of time. You do my usual 40-minute plus expose on something. Can I talk about enabling parents? What are enabling parents? Yeah, I don't, Brittany, I'm not quite for sure the angle you're looking for, but, Toxic Mother book. That's right. Furry Babies, you were asking me about that. I have a couple. One's by, I'm trying to think, Jamie Corey or something like that. They're over there. I used to have them on my desk. Look for the book by Lindsay Gibson called Adult Children of Immature Parents, Emotionally Immature Parents. She has 3 books in that series. They're all very, very good. They're smaller, but they're very good. Actually, the first one was Amazon's bestseller for a while. She did very, very well. I've heard her speak for 6+ hours. Awesome material. Then Susan Forward wrote on one. So you can look at Susan Forward stuff. There's another one of, I think it's called Jasmine something or other is another book. By the way, for all of you, you're having me bring these off the top of my head. I have a list. I don't know if you knew that. I have a mental health resource list, and I'm thinking, now, is it listed in the link in my bio? I don't actually know. But I have actually a list that you can go to and then see all these books that I list. And I do break them out by category. Same for you, Whitney. I have a list that talks about books for narcissists as well. I just can't off the top of my head and think of them because I used to have them sitting here right in front of me and I don't have them anymore. But enabling parents, you were asking about enabling parents. Yes, Toxic Parents by Susan Forward. Thank you, Bree. Bree would know. That's one of Bree's topics. If you guys aren't following Abuse is Abuse, she's amazing. She's both on Instagram and on TikTok and really has wonderful stuff. No, I don't have my book listed or my set of books listed. So I will, here it is. I do. It is. It's under resources. So you go to the link in my bio, which is a link tree. Way at the bottom, it says other resources, and it says favorite mental health books. So if you go there, you will see all the books broke down by categories that are my favorite. And it includes by parents and books for partners, books for narcissists. I have them listed by category. Yeah. But enabling parents, and parents, we're invested in our children. We really want our children to do well. And sometimes that causes us to be a bit blind in our awareness of our children's flaws and failings. And we also want to, we identify to such a point. I start to say over-identify. In a way, it is an over-identification. We identify with them so powerfully that their pain is our pain. We just have this incredible connection. It's almost, symbiotic in a way. It's very, very deep and connected. So what happens, though, is that we struggle with seeing them fail. We end up jumping in and preventing whatever their bad decisions, the consequences of their bad decisions from happening to them. But what we don't realize is that we're shortcutting the process of learning, because most of us don't learn from pleasure. When things go well, we learn from pain. It's when we burn our hands on the stove that we learn not to touch the stove. It's not that we learn by watching our food get cooked to not touch the stove. It's from consequences that usually are instructive, which is where there is a popular style of child rearing called love and logic when I was raising kids. Yes, I am 60. For real, I really am 60. And love and logic was really big in the 90s when I was raising my kids. And it was teaching through kind of moments, painful moments, consequences. And that you would actually set your kids up for failure in a way that is tolerable so that they failed on small things and didn't fail on big things. Let me give you an example. One of them that I did with my kids, they got an allowance. They had to do certain things to earn money, and then they would get to spend it the way they wanted. And one of my kids wanted to spend $40 for something that I knew wouldn't last and I knew wasn't worth the value. I knew that. I knew it was, he was throwing money away. I knew that. And I thought, but if I don't let him learn that he needs to really do his assessment and maybe check with other people and do sort of like really question why he's doing what he's doing, that he will then make other bigger choices that might be really hurtful with money when he turns 16, 18, or 20, or 25. So I let him go and buy it. And of course it broke within the first week. I knew that it would. I just knew it wasn't worth it. And he cried and it hurt. I hurt. He hurt. But you know what? I never saw him make that decision again. I just didn't. He learned from it. And I never weighed in. I never said yes, no, good or bad. I just said, well, it's your money, These are the questions I would ask if I was about ready to spend that amount of money on something, for how long you worked for it. But it is your money. And then I, of course, it really hurt when it didn't go well for him. But like I said, he learned from it. So that's how they use instructive moments to teach kids so they don't make bigger errors. But it's hard. An enabling parent would never have let that happen. They would have jumped in. Now, I'm not saying I perfectly never enabled my kids. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely I did. But I tried to not. I tried to resist where I could. It's hard. It's hard because we over-identify with our kids. By using natural consequences. And the same for adulthood. We just need to let people experience natural consequences. They're late on. I know for me, school and grades was really big. I had a hard time not jumping in. How are you in the homework? How's things are going? One of my sons works as a developer, software developer, and the way that their schedule is really weird. It's not the way that I ever worked. They work really hard, and then they have periods where they don't work much at all. And it was stressing me out because he and I share an apartment together, and I depend on him for the finances. And one day I said to him, you're making me nervous. You're not losing your job, are you? And he said, no, this is the way things are for me. And I butt out, Mom, butt out. It's none of your business. He's been working with them for many years. They know him. So it's kind of reining yourself in like that. Yeah. So I'm kind of seeing if there's other questions you guys have been asking. Make sure to put a thumbs up in front of your questions. Oh, Bree, you keep giving me. Thank you so much, Bree. Cosmo said, I wish I never left my family. It's sad, even though they're emotionally abusive. It is sad. It is sad when we, for a lot of us, this is another piece of the healing is the loss. Tremendous loss. For me, it was a lost time. I lost some of my 50s to this relationship that I can't get back. My health was a little different at that period of time. I could have met somebody different. I wonder whether or not I would have met somebody better had I waited and not been such a rush. I lost a lot of money in the deal. That was really, really painful because he was about a marriage scam was my situation. So there's a lot of loss that goes into these that we have to grieve. And that's part of the healing is to look at this. And many of us don't have perfect families. And so we end up having this loss of connectedness, especially at this time of year We see people getting ready to do holiday things, and we know that that really won't be a part of our experience. And so that creates a longing and a lack. But create space for the sadness. Don't run from grief. Embrace the grief. There actually, I'm going to tell you, I don't quite know how to explain this, but because anyone who knows me knows I've lost a lot. My first husband died of cancer. My sister died this year, young, and she was my best friend. My dad died suddenly in a very freaky accident, and I lost him about 11 years ago. My oldest son is in remission from leukemia, so I live in the threat of him having his leukemia come back. So I live in a land of a lot of loss. What I've found is that actually loss is, there's a bittersweetness to it. And then when you allow yourself space, it brings you closer to the things and the people that you're missing, gets you in touch with it. And there's something kind of healing about it. So don't run from loss. I know it doesn't feel comfortable, but don't run from it. It actually is a healing experience. There is a question that came in here. I saw that. Okay, so Charlotte is asking a situation about a friend who wants to get together, and she's mad because Charlotte is busy, and she's asked like 25 plus times to get together. Are you a narcissist just because you're not available? No, actually, her inability to create space for your busyness, to me, was not very thoughtful, not very nice. Real friends would understand your availability. They would understand the demands in your life, and they would create respect for that. To me, it's problematic, Charlotte, that your friend can't. Why can't she see you better? Why don't you loom larger in her mind that she would respect your limitations? So you're not the narcissist. It sounds a little selfish on her side. I'm not saying she's a narcissist, but it sounds shallow. Friza wants to know, is it okay that I'm healed in 4 months after leaving my abusive husband? I healed because I realized his actions had nothing to do with me. I say all the more power to you. Absolutely. If you're able to disconnect yourself and find the separation like that in that short of time, way to go. Awesome. I have a suspicion you have a very supportive community that's helped. It's interesting because 40% of us struggle after a traumatic event healing, but 75% of us struggle after narcissistic abuse healing. I'm glad you're part of the 25%. That's awesome. That's really wonderful. So no, there's no timeline. All of us have our own way of healing and our own process. So there's no right or wrong way of healing. And so I'm just saying, God bless you. I'm glad that happened. So Simone, or SM, says over, I don't know how to say the acronym, SMONIZ 86. I finally reached my breaking point. I think I'm ready to leave, more than so before. Why is it so difficult? His mother is a BP. Is there any correlation between borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder? Oh, Samantha. Hi, Samantha. Nice to meet you. Yeah, they're both personality disorders. So yeah, and then they're in the same family. They're both part of the cluster B, or the antagonistic group of personality disorders. I suspect the reason you're having a hard time leaving is because you probably have a lot of conscientiousness. You score a little more higher on sense of integrity and responsibility. So you probably are worried that you're abandoning, or that it's not a right decision, or it's a decision you can't take back, which it is a decision you can't take back. You probably know that, so you're doing it very seriously. You're doing it carefully. That's all part of the cognitive dissonance, which is why that first steps to leaving a narcissist I recommend is so helpful. It helps you to identify the conflicting beliefs that you're having, why it makes it hard to leave. And that's why I find it so helpful for people to work through it, is to identify what's trapping you, which is making it hard for you to be able to exit the relationship. But chances are you have a good heart, and that's what's making this really tough. And thank you guys for tapping the screen and sharing this. I appreciate that. It is hard to leave millionaire loading. It is very hard because you do know that, for one, they're going to make sure it's mutual destruction. They're going to make sure that there's mass destruction in your life. They're going to really do you in if you leave. And there's no takebacks. They're going to see this as such a betrayal of them, a rejection of them, that there's no going back from this. And if there is, they're going to make sure that you pay for that. It will be so much worse if you come back to the relationship. That's why we don't recommend that you return. But it probably is your integrity, the person that you take these types of commitments very, very serious. It makes it hard to leave, very, very hard to leave. Yeah, it isn't. You're right. It doesn't even have to be personal. Thing with a narcissist, because they need to be right and they need to be controlled, it is personal. They can't not have it be personal. They experience everything like that personally. So you can say, hey, it's not personal, but they'll take it personally. That's how shaky and fragile their ego is. There's no such a thing as leaving without it being a personal slam to them. They would see it as a narcissistic wound. That's how they would experience that. Again, I highly recommend First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It's very, very helpful with you kind of breaking apart your hesitation, the belief systems that you have, the way you're hardwired that's making it really hard to leave. Speaking of that, and I know we have men and women here because I see both of you guys here, but Lundy Bancroft is being interviewed on February 9th, and the early bird tickets are from now to the end of the year. And then they'll go up by $5. So if you want to save money and you know you want to hear him, please get your tickets early. Don't wait on that. This is going to be an amazing, amazing day or evening, or it's actually a lunch. It's going to be a lunch with him. It's going to be an amazing time. He's going to talk about the mind of an abusive man. Why are they like that? What do we do culturally? What's wrong with the legal system? What is the effect on the family, on the children? All of that. How do we know when we should leave? Is there any hope for somebody who's abusive? Are they all mentally ill? These are the type of questions. What are the 9 profiles of an abusive man? To me, amazing. Lundy Bancroft worked with 2,000 criminal inmates and then studied them and researched sort of the mental thinking that they have. He wrote the book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Mind of an Angry and Controlling Men. So I'm super excited. I really, really want to see you there. It's going to be an amazing time, and we're going to have a great time on February 9th. Again, the link is in my bio. How are you guys feeling about the holidays coming up? Are you ready? You guys shopping much? I'm 6 months in. I'm struggling to be more with missing my stepkids than before. 0 contact. First of all, way to go. I know that's hard, very, very hard. And in the beginning, it's trying to like break an addiction. You know, the trauma bond's like an addiction. It's really, really hard. So a way to go, shifts and pickles. Shits and pickles. That's great. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Brittany. We need to approach ourselves from a very self-loving perspective, a very forgiving perspective. And we know that we did our best at any given moment with the resources we had. And now something happened, you now move forward, move forward with more information. And I really agree with you, Brittany. That's how, Daphne, I don't know, I missed what you're struggling with, but I agree with Brittany. That's really great advice. Sure, Samantha, what's your other question? Why do they lie repulsively or repetitively, even when there's given proof? Well, so if you go back to the narcissist's fragile sense of self, which is, remember how if you caught the beginning of this, I talked about how we have a sense of our shame early on. We know that we're not perfect, and we worry that people will leave us or abandon us if they know us. That dilemma, and irregardless of how it gets, I know irregardless is not a word, but I like the word. I think it should be a word. But regardless of how that's formed, whether it's formed because of genetics, I know that Dr. Ramani came out and said, oh, there's lots of ways of becoming a narcissist. Yeah, Dr. Gregory Lester, who works a lot with narcissists, so does Dr. Ramani. I'm not saying she doesn't, but he says, no, it's a biosocial. It's primarily genetic with social components. So however it gets formed, and those two can kind of battle it out in social media, they have a fragile sense of self. Their sense of self is, they don't know that. They fear rejection and fear abandonment to such a profound instinctual level that they can't even own it, can't even look at it. It's so part of the essential part of their deep core. So what they do is they lie because they fear if you knew them, you would reject them. They fear vulnerability would lead to risk, so they don't risk at all. They treat truth. This is what I watched with mine. I saw mine repetitively lie. He lied about stuff that was stupid. Nobody cared. We were literally driving one day, heading out for something, maybe going to dinner. A friend of his called and said, "What are you doing?" or something. I listened to him lie. There was no issue with telling that friend what we were really up to. It wasn't like he letting a friend down. The friend was just asking. But my ex lied just for the sake of lying. He didn't feel the guy needed to know. He felt it was elective. Truth was elective. because they're hiding. They don't want anyone to know, because for fear if you knew, then that would give you power over them and they might lose something by that. They really view it as a zero-sum game. And if so you have this knowledge of them, then that makes them more vulnerable to you, and they don't want to be known like that. It's sad. It's so sad. It's just crazy like this. Yeah. I'm going to take 2 more questions and then we'll kind of wrap it up today. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys being with me. Thank you so much for following me. Be sure that you check out the Lundy Bancroft upcoming seminar. Also, are you aware that I have a skill building group therapy? It's actually it's group coaching. It's really group coaching, but it's skill building, and it starts in January 7th with Trey De La Torre. So if you're finding yourself sort of excessively can't stop thinking, and you find yourself really anxious and worked up, and you want to figure out how to get your life back and build better exercises, resources, this is perfect. It's going to be a perfect group. It's for 6 sessions. It's 75 minutes on a Saturday afternoon, starts January 7th, and it's with Trey. Trey, I don't know if you know, is actually getting his PhD in occupational therapy. He's getting really close to being done. So you get the benefit of 2 professionals teaching skills. So it'll be really, really great. Oh, thank you, Bubbles. I appreciate that. And dealing with missing the good times, of which there are few. Yeah, Kaz, that's part of it, is learning to build your new good times. To look at your life and say, what is it that I used to do that I really loved before this person was in my life? And how do I begin to do it again, and maybe in a different way or in a new way? That's one of the things I would really urge you to begin to think about, is how to reclaim that for yourself. And maybe it means getting out of the box a bit. It might mean you have to think of it in a new way. Winnie, I don't know if that's your real name. I'm just like Winnie, it's what I'm doing to your name. But how you sign up is through a link in my bio. So if you just go up and click the link, it's right at the top. That's how you sign up for the group. But yeah, I hear your struggle, Kaz, and I understand that it is a problem. Then somebody asked just before about not going to counseling with your husband. No, don't go to counseling with a narcissist. No, nope. They'll weaponize the counseling against you. I watched it happen all the years I did counseling, and then it happened to me when I went to counseling. No, go to therapy for yourself. Normally, if it was about a normal relationship issue, I'd say absolutely, of course, but this isn't. So we asked over on TikTok, are you ready for the holidays? 50% of you said, I'm anxious and not ready. 33% of you said, I'm somewhere in the middle, and 16% of you, I'm boundaries up and I'm ready. Oh, I love that, Brittany. Yeah. So what is it? Where's your biggest vulnerability around the holidays? What are you feeling most anxious and not ready about? Is it the questions? Is it the just being around people that you haven't been around in a while? I would love to know where you're feeling nervous, feeling not ready. Somebody asked me if I please would promote GoFundMe link. I don't do that. I'm sorry. Because I don't know you and I don't know what your agenda is. And then that makes me uncomfortable. I don't want people taking advantage. And maybe you have a complete legit reason for getting funding, but that's something that I don't know. So I don't want to misrepresent anything. So I'm sorry about that. But I'm sorry you're also in that position right now. Yeah, so some of you are saying that you don't want the toxic people to ruin the relationship. Others of you said you feel like you're sad, you don't want to go in and don't want to fake anything. That makes sense. And then some of you said you just don't like the complications that come with dealing with difficult people. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work. Going into these relationships are a lot of work. Julianne, no, I wouldn't recommend that you go in with a narcissist parent either. I wouldn't recommend that. It's for the same reasons as with a spouse. They can't hear. They have such an egocentric view of the world. They'll skew everything that they hear to the point you won't even feel like you went to the same therapy session. What they walk out of with versus what you walk out with, it will be a completely different thing. Oh, Green Fire Pit says, no matter how, I love big green. I used to have a big green ceramic thing. It's great. No matter how much I plan my boundaries, my mom's always blows them up, so I'm nervous. Yeah, I understand that. It is. And you're right, Julianne, they often gaslight. Yeah, Brittany, they often gaslight the therapist. Mine did. Mine fooled our therapist over and over. He fooled multiple therapists. So I recommend staying in a narcissistic marriage to protect the children? No, I do not. I am very pro marriage. In fact, if you met me back in the day, I would have put your marriage first over top of you or your partner. These days, I don't. I put the safety of the partners over top of the marriage. Your children are witnessing you not being safe, and they're having to navigate this person while you're navigating this person, and it creates a very odd dynamic in the house. It's not a very healthy dynamic. What I recommend is that by leaving, they have a chance to be with you alone and have a healthier relationship with you alone. Yes, they still have to navigate that toxic relationship with that partner, their father or mother, but at least they get a period of time with just you. And at least you get to normalize what's happening and have a little more say-so by processing it with them with alone. Whereas right now, you all are just trying to stay safe. Again, think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All of you are stuck at bottom of level number 2. You can't go into focusing on belonging and love. You're all trying to manage safety. That's just not a very healthy situation. How can kids grow, experiment, play, learn when they're just trying to manage safety? It's very, very hard. I know that because I grew up in a home like that. It's very hard to manage, to experiment and take chances when you're just trying to stay safe. My creativity was greatly stunted because of that. So I would say, I hate to say that because I really am pro-marriage, but I would say no, I would really urge you to reconsider, if it is narcissistic, as you say, to really reconsider that. Absolutely, please fight for full custody. I think you should. But you need to plan ahead and have a strategy. Again, check out Dr. Ramadi's Craved, Craved, and document how all those things are happening in the relationship so that you walk in prepared. Get a divorce coach. It's really helpful. It's really, really helpful. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm hopping over to YouTube now to watch and sit with anybody who wants to watch Tuesdays live with me. It's a replay of Tuesdays live, but I chat. So that's where I'm going to be. And thank you so much for this. Have a good weekend. I won't be going live next week. I will be out of town. But I will be back after that, and I will be back through the holidays with you guys. So I will see you. I'll see you in 10 days. So I'll come back then. All right, you guys take it easy and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.